We haven't made a video directly going over this topic, so I guess it's about high time we do so. Let's talk today about the Vancouver Canucks and their winger situation. This is the problem with the way the Vancouver Canucks are assembled at the time of recording this audio. Now, we're going over on an article on The Province written by Patrick Johnston earlier July 11th, because what he did was it kind of lays everything out there on the line in a pretty cohesive way, which makes it easier to go out there and just kind of explain what is happening here. He talks about the wingers, he talks about the Canucks and what their desires are, whom they're thinking about trading, and so it's an interesting read. I'll leave a link in the description to this article. Canucks, Nils Hoglander signing gives the team too many wingers, so what happens next? The Canucks, according to PJ, will have 16 forwards as options at the NHL level. 2 or 3 will have to go before the regular season starts October 11th. Now, when it comes to whom the Canucks are putting in the lineup, who they think is going to be there, Rick Tocchet actually says that when it comes to 2 of the younger guys, he wants them to be energy bunnies, Hoglander and Podkolzin. That is what he said on Sportsnet 650 earlier this week, and it's a pretty nice comment because hearing the head coach feel that he has NHL caliber players out of these 2 young guys, it's a good thing. You want to see this further development. Nils Hoglander spent a good chunk of time in the AHL last season, Podkolzin the same. So when it comes to these 2, alright, we can probably pencil them in as NHL players. But when it comes to the rest of the lineup, this is where things get a little bit dicey. We've said this already, but the Canucks, when healthy, have already, just based off of Hoglander and Podkolzin being in the lineup, 4 lines worth of wingers. Because if you go down the list, Kuzmenko, Garland, Boeser, that's 3 right-handed guys. You've got Mikheyev, you've got Pearson, and you've got Beauvillier. That's 3 left-handed guys. Add on Podkolzin and Hoglander, and you have literally 4 lines worth of wingers. Rick Tocchet said on the Sportsnet 650 radio interview that young players bring enthusiasm and energy to a team, and with a glut of wingers on his roster, it's clear what Tocchet wants to see from Hoglander and Podkolzin if they're going to be regular fixtures in the lineup. Can they be first in the forecheck? Can they get the crowd going at Rogers Arena? Those are things you want these young guys to do. Just add a little bit of spice and life to your team. Now, I'm not going to lie, I never really thought of young guys as being the ones to get the crowd going. In a way, I mean, the way he's phrasing that, it sounds like kinda he's talking about a hitting capacity or a fighting capacity, not necessarily what comes to my mind right away, but either way, Tocchet has his ideas, and it's good to see him articulate that at this part in the summer, because it gives us stuff to talk about pretty much. From here, PJ talks about the wingers, he talks about all the names that we had talked about. He says that 2 or 3 of them will have to go before the regular season starts October 11th. The centers on the roster to start the season are obvious: Pettersson, Miller, Bluger, and Nils Åman. And then you have yourself someone maybe like Max Sasson who could find himself in there. The centers are set, but the wingers are a jumbled mess. He then talks about the options, he then talks about Dakota Joshua. It's a lot. There are so many guys that the Canucks could rotate in and around the bottom of their lineup in the winger spots. Pearson is not really all too guaranteed. Jack Studnicka is a part of the team as well. So there are a lot of guys. And one of the options PJ talks about is a trade to fix these problems. A trade could also relieve the roster glut, but according to PJ, the only true trade candidates are Brock Boeser, Conor Garland, and Hoglander. But the Canucks may seem disinclined to trade any of them at this point. They may not have a choice, though. The way Hoglander played in the AHL in the second half of the year and then into the Calder Cup playoffs was promising. He was head and shoulders over the competition in how quickly he processed the game, including his offensive creativity. But the challenge for him is to be the kind of player Tocchet described, a guy whose switch is always on, who makes a difference every shift. And so with Tocchet placing all of this, let's just say, value and trust in a guy like Nils Hoglander, that he may be able to do what it is that Tocchet wants him to do. He said the same thing about Podkolzin. It makes it seem like the Canucks may not be inclined to trading him away. But of course, right? The GM and the coach are not the same person. What Rick Tocchet says may not have an influence on what the GM does. Maybe the GM goes out there and trades away a guy that Tocchet is really excited to see next season just because they feel like he's the best fit. But if you trade a guy like Hoglander away, you all of a sudden have to start thinking, okay, well, what exactly is the value here? Nils Hoglander, you could debate, was more valuable when he made his debut with the Vancouver Canucks in the the North Division season, 2020-2021. And in that time frame, he was younger, he was better at producing points, and he was not playing in the AHL. He came to the NHL, he was really good, and a lot of people around the league started to take notice. Hey, look at this second-round guy is outperforming the first-round guy the Canucks took in Carlsson. That's interesting. As the years have gone on, though, his numbers declined, he started playing in the AHL, and while he's definitely improved in the American Hockey League, so much to the point that you could say that his NHL development was rushed, around the league, that reputation is not going to have the same weight. And so, if you feel like a trade is necessary for Hoglander, I honestly would say that maybe his value is a bit lower than it was a few years ago. And would the Canucks be comfortable going out there and making a trade with a guy whom they're selling lower on than if they decided to trade him away before? That's my question with this entire thing. Then you have yourselves the other idea that Garland and Boeser are the only other guys that the Canucks might actually be interested, or not be interested in trading, but find a way to get done trading if they were to force their hand and make a move. For Brock Boeser, we've already seen the comments. He wants to stick around here in Vancouver. He he pulled back his trade request from earlier in the season. And that's a good thing to see because a lot of Canucks fans here, even though we understand that Brock may not ever be the rookie goal scorer that he was, getting 30 goals a year, we still love this guy. He's a good player. He's a good teammate to Petey. He has been a part of this team for a while. I mean, might I remind you, his debut was 2017-18. That was, coming up on 6 years ago now? Kinda crazy how time flies, doesn't it? But for Brock, if they found a way to trade away Boeser and his $6-point-something million AV salary, I honestly would be a bit surprised. It's not like he's been terrible in terms of the numbers. His production has actually improved over the course of last season, but that dollar amount, I'd say, is pretty beefy for the points that he provides. You could say that Brock Boeser is a good teammate, he's a good guy, this and that, good leader, but is he a $6-point-something million AAV player? You could debate that he probably isn't, and I think a lot of NHL teams could see that as well, especially noting the struggles he has had over the past few years with staying healthy and staying consistent, let alone all the off-ice trauma he had to go through. It's going to be difficult to trade away Brock Boeser, and it's understandable why the Canucks would not want to try to do that. Which leaves Conor Garland as the final piece. Now, he's an interesting one because a lot of Canucks fans would go out there and say that when it comes to the Boeser versus Garland argument, Garland provides more value. He's more feisty, he gets in the board battles, he has this scoring touch that brings itself out once in a while. He had a hat trick in the last game of the season against his old team, which was nice to see. But Conor Garland, in my mind, is not necessarily the same Conor Garland that we were all fawning over, head over heels, back at the start of his tenure in Vancouver. After the Canucks made the OEL Garland trade, and Garland was playing in that first season under Travis Green, he was the best player on the team, by far. He was the only guy going out there and doing things, he was the only guy getting points, but after Bruce Boudreau took over, you really started to see a decline there, and as of late, you've seen more so of a profile in Garland where he'll take the puck, he'll come down the wing, he'll spin around in the corner, hold on to the puck for too long, get neutralized, and then it's a turnover. I don't want to say Jake Virtanen syndrome, but Conor Garland definitely did not have the same effectiveness in the second parts of his Canucks career compared to when he started, and that is kind of concerning. Sure, the dollar amount is still there. Sub $5 million AAV for a guy who can pot you 40 to 50 points is not bad. It's just for a Canucks team that needs to get rid of wingers, this is the guy whom we've been pointing our fingers at and saying, yeah, it's him. That's the guy. So, the fact that a trade has not been done yet, the fact that they're still sort of in this same limbo with the same guys, you could even talk about Beauvillier as being a potential trade option, but I don't know, they already traded the other asset they got in the Bo Horvat trade already, so who really knows what's going to happen there. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section, though. What are your opinions about this Canucks winger trade update? How Hoglander, Podkolzin, these guys are apparently going to be in the system. Rick Tocchet wants to see more out of them next year. Hoglander, Boeser, Garland, these guys might be the only guys the Canucks could find value in trading away. But when it comes to trading these guys away, what are your thoughts about that? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. I hope you enjoyed this video. And bye.